Alright, so today I have a special video as I will go over the entire recruitment arc in solo leveling. In this arc, some truly wild things happen as we see the American government trying to recruit Jinwoo after his amazing performance in the Jeju Island raid. However, that's not all, as they are promising him a power which lets Jinwoo go even more beyond what he's already capable of, which I'm telling you right now is completely insane, so I would definitely recommend you sticking to the end because this is an arc you don't want to miss. Anyway, with that said, this is spoilers for anime-only watchers, so be careful of that. But with that out of the way, please leave a like and a comment on this video, and grab your favorite snacks, and with that out of the way, let's get right into it. After the end of the Jeju Island raid, everyone was talking about Sung Jinwoo, amazed at his ability to summon multiple creatures, praising him for conquering an island that contains the remains of their loved ones. The Jeju Island mission was Jinwoo's first official raid after becoming an S-rank hunter, and since people started to discuss the raid due to sheer interest in it, Jinwoo became the hot topic of the forums and news channels, with some wondering if he is a national rank hunter. However, an overblown praise is accompanied by a harsher criticism, as some people also started to blame Jinwoo for joining the Jeju Island raid very late, claiming that they would not have had to lose Min Byung-gu if Jinwoo had been there a little earlier. Although there were people who supported Jinwoo against such criticism, they did not match the overwhelming criticism Jinwoo got for joining the raid late, since it was true that there were sacrifices. Jinwoo pays his respects to the fallen hunters, along with Min Byung-gu, and glances over the weeping eyes of the family of the deceased. Baek Yoon-ho, who is heartbroken over his friend's death, walks past Jinwoo, telling him to keep his head up because he never imagined a lone warrior could end a war on his own. But Jinwoo ended this tragic tale alone, proving Baek Yoon-ho and everyone else wrong. 4,801 hunters participated in the 4th Jeju Island raid, 727 of whom were normal awakeners, and it caused the deaths of 64 awakeners, along with 32 commoners. This raid was a tragedy that ended with a vain number. However, compared to the previous 4 attempts on Jeju Island, this raid had the least amount of injuries. The scene then shifts to Chairman Go Gun-hee, who asks about Jinwoo's plan on creating his own guild, and informs him that, contrary to non-S-rank hunters who need a guildmaster permit, people with S-rank hunter licenses just have to give the association a call. Jinwoo, on the other hand, wants to learn about the advantages of being an S-rank hunter so that he can make the most out of this meeting. But before he is able to do so, Go Gun-hee asks Jinwoo if he has put some sort of barrier on Jeju Island. Jinwoo gets confused by this question, while Go Gun-hee explains that there was an incident involving people passing out after going to take care of the ants and magic crystals. But what is surprising is that all of these people were A or B rank hunters, some of whom were also members of the Knights Guild. Go Gun-hee believes that Jinwoo might have forgotten to mention anything about a barrier to the association. However, Jinwoo clarifies that he did not place any kind of barrier and inquires if Chairman Gun-hee has heard anything from the hunters. Go Gun-hee replies that the hunters do not recall anything that happened before they lost consciousness, and the association cannot even find out if they were attacked by magic, which makes Jinwoo wonder if it was some kind of trap left by the ants. As they are wondering about it, Chairman Gun-hee is informed by the early arrival of some guests, because of which he has to leave, so he thanks Jinwoo for his time and goes on his way, while Jinwoo also has to go somewhere. Jinwoo is about to enter his car when he is approached by Adam White, who is a senior agent from the United States Bureau of Hunters. Adam mentions that he wanted to meet Jinwoo at his office, but because it was hard to find Jinwoo, he had no choice but to meet Jinwoo at the parking lot. Jinwoo wonders if he's the same foreigner Jinho was talking about. Jinwoo asks Adam why he came here, to which Adam responds that he wanted to provide Jinwoo with exclusive information that Jinwoo may not be able to obtain from any other country or institute besides them. Jinwoo, instead of hastily asking about the information, asks Adam why he is willing to give that kind of information to him. Adam mentions that revealing this information only to certain people is beneficial to them, and while Adam was the only one tasked with meeting Jinwoo, the recent Jeju Island raid impressed everyone, including their deputy director, to the point where the deputy director wanted to meet Jinwoo in person, which is unusual in and of itself. Adam informs Jinwoo that if he wants to meet the deputy director, he has prepared a car for him not far from here. Jinwoo is not sure if the information would even be reliable, so he decides not to meet the deputy director at the moment and tells Adam that he needs some time to think about it. However, Adam, who already has better cards to lure Jinwoo, asks him if he knows about the Awakener who is capable of increasing the ability of another Awakener. Just as Adam expected, this was more than enough to catch Jinwoo's attention, and after some time, they both arrived at the office, where Jinwoo was greeted by Michael Connor, the deputy director of the United States Bureau of Hunters. Connor gets straight to the point and offers the immigration papers of America to Jinwoo, giving him the privilege of becoming an American citizen in 1 second, something that usually takes 1 or 2 years. Jinwoo goes silent for a moment, and then mentions that he only came here to get the information Adam promised, and asks Connor if it is really possible to increase one's ability with the help of an awakener. Connor was already prepared for that, so he ordered one of his subordinates to escort Mrs. Sellner to the room. Michael Connor informs Jinwoo that Mrs. Norma Sellner is the only awakener in the world who can help other awakeners exceed their limits. Jinwoo notices that Mrs. Sellner does have a difference as compared to other hunters Jinwoo has met. Connor then requests that Mrs. Sellner explain her ability to Jinwoo, upon which Mrs. Sellner remarks that Jinwoo has the same surprised expression as the other hunters when they first meet her. However, she assures that once Jinwoo gets a taste of her ability, he will be desperately clinging to it. Mrs. Sellner then mentions that all the awakeners have a limit that they are not able to exceed, which stops them from reaching a higher rank unless they are lucky enough to get reawakened. However, she has the ability to help others get past that limit by helping the hunters go through 3 stages, but she's not certain whether she is reawakening them by force or just raising their potential. After Mrs. Sellner finishes her explanation, Connor informs Jinwoo that only a few awakeners can be chosen each year to earn the benefits, because once Mrs. Sellner uses her ability, she has to rest for a long time, which means Jinwoo is one of those few lucky individuals. Jinwoo, curious regarding the ability, asks Mrs. Sellner about its efficiency, to which Mrs. Sellner responds that it depends on the person, but once one finishes the 3rd stage, they can feel a 20 to 30% increase in their strength. Jinwoo is amazed at the numbers and finally realizes why Hunter Hwang Dong-soo decided to move to America despite the sheer amount of criticism from the country, because there is no way one can refuse such an opportunity. Jinwoo comments that if this ability spreads to the outside world, Mrs. Sellner will face serious problems. However, Connor points out that this is precisely why the Bureau takes responsibility for her safety and pays her a reasonable amount of money, while in return, Mrs. Sellner helps the hunter the Bureau selects reach a higher level. Connor then tells Jinwoo that the Bureau wants to give Mrs. Sellner's ability as a gift. However, Jinwoo is aware that rather than being a gift, it is more like a deal, which is something confirmed by Connor, who promises to let Jinwoo be the first one to earn the benefits of Mrs. Sellner's ability. Moreover, in order to create the best deal, Connor also promises to make an arrangement with any guild Jinwoo likes. However, Mrs. Sellner tells Jinwoo to rush it, as the reason they came here was to let Jinwoo use her ability for once. Jinwoo is rather surprised at this, but Mrs. Sellner tells him that it is his gift from them. Jinwoo is still hesitant to use Mrs. Sellner's ability, that too without any kind of cost. However, Connor tells him to not ponder a lot over it, and consider it a service from the Bureau. Mrs. Sellner's claims about her ability to be addictive to hunters make Jinwoo realize she is quite confident, so he decides to give it a shot. But it was exactly what Connor wanted him to do, because once Jinwoo, who has been maintaining his cool up until now, goes through the 1st stage of Mrs. Sellner's ability, he will undoubtedly contact the Bureau again, and if he is impatient, he may even sign the contract immediately. Connor is curious about Jinwoo's limits, because he is the hunter who easily cleared the Jeju Island raid, which even the man aiming for national level, Ryuji Goto, was not able to do. Mrs. Sellner grabs Jinwoo's hands and instructs him to look deeply into her eyes, which is the first step in activating her ability. Mrs. Sellner activates her ability and is surprised to find herself in a void. Confused and concerned, she begins to observe the abyss, making the rookie mistake of looking into it. As a result, the abyss stares back at her, and Mrs. Sellner's gaze is met by an entity in this void who looks deeply into her eyes. For unknown reasons, Mrs. Sellner suddenly loses her mind and screams loudly, confusing everyone around her. Mrs. Sellner's guards suddenly point their guns at Jinwoo, as they suspect he might have done something to Mrs. Sellner. However, Connor immediately orders them to put their guns down, as the man in front of them is none other than Jinwoo, who conquered the Jeju Island alone. Connor instructs the bodyguards to protect Mrs. Sellner and reminds them that everyone here would have died if they had pointed their guns at Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigang. Connor quickly apologizes to Jinwoo for their agent's rude behavior. However, Jinwoo does not mind because he is just as confused as everyone else in the room. Connor then looks after Mrs. Sellner, who is sweating profusely and realizes she is not feeling well at the moment. Because of Mrs. Sellner's poor condition, Connor promises to contact Jinwoo another time and orders Adam to accompany Jinwoo to his home. Mrs. Selner eventually speaks after Jinwoo walks out of the room, telling Connor that Jinwoo is an immensely powerful king. Connor, frightened upon hearing this, asks Mrs. Selner if Jinwoo is as strong as the national level hunters, but because Mrs. Selner has never experienced something like this before, she is not sure of that. However, she is dead certain that Jinwoo is a king who is different than the others, because when Mrs. Selner looked at the entity inside Jinwoo, it looked back at her. Mrs. Selner trembles at the mere thought of that entity and believes that the entity she saw was not Jinwoo, but rather the endless darkness inside him, who was staring deeply at her. Mrs. Selner mentions that out of all the hunters she has met, Jinwoo is the only hunter who does not have a limit. The scene then shifts to Chairman Gunhee, who is lamenting over the loss of Hunter Min Byung-gu, whom he hesitates to call a hunter since he retired. Chairman Gunhee believes that Byung-gu's sacrifice was a noble one, and he cannot bring himself to give closure to a raid like this. However, Chairman Gunhee believes that they need to prepare themselves for upcoming obstacles, as the next time it happens, it will not end with just one sacrifice. As he is thinking about it, Chairman Gunhee is informed by a B-rank gate that has appeared in the middle of the road, and because an average attack squad would be unable to handle such a gate, he decides to contact a large guild to deal with it. But as he is about to do so, Chairman Gunhee recalls that Jinwoo has recently opened his office near that location, so he decides to request Jinwoo to deal with it. Jinwoo, on the other hand, is in his car, wondering if the reason Mrs. Selner's condition got worse after activating her ability is because she saw a trace of the system in his mind, because that is the only possible explanation for her to be so scared of Jinwoo. Jinwoo believes he will never be able to meet Mrs. Selner again, so he decides not to think about it, and instead begins to worry about the traffic, which has been jammed for quite some time, to the point it makes Jinwoo prefer the rush hour at the subway. While he complains about it, he receives a call from Chairman Gunhee, who informs him about the gate in the middle of the road and requests Jinwoo to take care of it, as it has jammed the traffic. Jinwoo asks if he is allowed to do so without permission, to which Chairman Gunhee responds that he does not need to be concerned because he is talking to the very chairman of the association that issues raid permits to hunters. Jinwoo then walks towards the gate, which is being monitored by the Hunter Association. Jinwoo gets stopped by an agent from the Hunter Association, who refuses to let Jinwoo enter the gate even though he is an S-rank hunter, and tells him to follow the proper process if he wants to raid a gate. To resolve this issue, Jinwoo calls Chairman Gunhee and hands the phone to the agent, instructing him to answer the call of the person he cannot ignore. The poor agent, unaware that the call is from the chairman of the Hunters Association, answers hesitantly, only to be chastised by the chairman, who orders him to allow Jinwoo to enter the gate. After that, Jinwoo enters the gate without hesitation, while the agent, irritated by Jinwoo, wishes he would trip over himself and break an ankle. Coincidentally, the color of the gate changes to red shortly after, which makes the worried agent wonder if the god has actually answered his wish. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo, who has also realized that it is a red gate, but since the exit has closed, he might have to overdo himself, which is exactly something his mom told him not to do. Jinwoo's mom, Park Kyung-hee, did not want to stop Jinwoo from being a hunter, as they cannot do anything about the awakening, and since Jinwoo, just like his father, is an S-rank, he is bound to save many lives. Kyung-hee mentions that Jinwoo's father used to be a firefighter before he became a hunter, and she fell in love with him when she saw him saving people, and if Jinwoo wants to follow his father's footsteps, she cannot stop him. Jinwoo is glad that his mother was not against all of this, and after observing the monsters in this dungeon, Jinwoo does not think it would be too much for him, so he aims to finish it within a day. A hunter is always destined to hunt, and since monsters are not the only enemy for a hunter, hunters have to be careful so that they do not get hunted in return. And because their position can change at any time, the first-rate hunters have to be even more careful not to lower their guard. Even if there are hundreds or thousands of hunts, it never ends. But despite that, not a single person has any intention to stop hunting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the entire recruitment arc, and what a short but still truly interesting arc, as we learned a lot about Jinwoo, but also America overall, and how truly strong they might be. However, if you want to find out more about who they are, then you will unfortunately have to wait until the next video where I go over the next arc. Anyway, if you like solo leveling and want to keep up with the content, then be sure to subscribe. Anyway, have a great day, and bye.